Okay, here we go. Austin Thomas is an artist, curator, community builder, and exhibition manager, orchestrating and communicating with many different types of people and materials to get things done. Sounds like our kind of person. From 2007 to 2015, she directed the influential Pocket Utopia Gallery in New York City. Austin is a graduate of NYU and has received numerous residencies and fellowships, including Wave Hill, Gutenberg Arts, the Elizabeth Foundation for the Arts, Macmillan, LMCC, and others. And lots of great things in your bio: permanent public sculpture for a park in Brooklyn. I know some folks on this call are actually from New York. Hi, Kim. Kim's from Brooklyn. Maybe she's seen your public sculpture. And you were included in Sharon Loudon's great books on living and creating a sustainable life. Been written lots of places: Hyperallergic, Brooklyn Rail, Paris Review. Just, you're amazing, Austin. So thank you so much for being here and for sharing with our community. We really appreciate it.
That's so nice. I'm so happy to be here. So since some of you I don't know, if we can somehow exchange like Instagram handles, it's always nice to, broaden the community and continue the conversation. So if
Austin, tell me your Instagram. I'll put it in the chat. And
sure, it's Austin Thomas Artist.
And folks can reach out to you, especially those of you in New York.
Yeah, and I'll do a screenshot of anybody else's, if
guys
they put it in the chat.
Yeah, put your Instagram handles in the chat so Austin can.
And then before we go, I'll screenshot it or something.
I can save the chat for you.
Okay, great.
Everybody's.
So I'm gonna share my screen.
Oh, let me.
Oh, wait, no.
There you go.
Okay.
Sorry.
You're gonna enable me.
You're enabled.
Thanks. I'm just gonna start from the beginning. Okay, everybody can see that?
Yep.
So it's kind of like a meta picture because that's where I am. I'm in my studio.
Austin, it says loading.
Oh, it does?
Yeah. I have a black screen that says
loading. Does anybody else have a black screen?
Yeah.
Everybody?
Yeah.
Let me stop sharing and try again.
Okay. I saw that it was a picture of Big Magic, I think, but. So if you've just come in, feel free to put your Instagram handle in the chat, and I'm going to download them and send to Austin.
So can you see that?
Okay. Yes. Your studio, an image of your
yeah.
studio.
I'm in my studio, and it's a picture of my studio, and everybody can see it.
Yep.
Okay. So my name is Austin Thomas. I live in New York City. I'm in my studio in Koreatown. This is a picture of my studio. This is actually exactly what it looks like right now. And I'm on my lunch hour, actually a little bit extended. Don't tell anybody. Is anybody, no one's here that works at FIT, right? Disclose yourself, because I might, reveal
I doubt
things. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So what's talked about here, maybe it stays here. And I'm on my lunch hour. And what I do at FIT is I manage the gallery space there. And here's a picture of the space. And if you are in New York, please come visit. Let me know, reach out. I'll try to give you a tour. It's essentially like a 3-ring circus, primarily showing a lot of student work and faculty, alumni, guest artists. And we have, if you could look up in maybe the upper, I don't know what, upper right, there's like a glass room. That's a studio. We have an artist in resident program. And here's just a picture of the back gallery. And it's a really busy job. I've been there for almost 5 years. And the reason why I said, is anybody here from FIT, is because I am planning an exit strategy. I really want to reopen my gallery, Pocket Utopia, and sort of do other projects. This is, I was only supposed to be at this job for a short period of time, and it's been extended, and I'm sort of looking towards the exit. This is a big space. This is 27th and 7th Avenue, like smack in the middle of New York City, and it is busy. So what I do most days is I come to my studio, which is teeny tiny in Koreatown, and I meditate on the floor, because this is a print of mine, and I really sort of believe in these things, think of your ideas as big and operative in a larger universe. Your thoughts are ever expanding and taking you places. Now, I come here and I meditate on the floor. I say that to people at FIT all the time. They're like, where are you going? I say, oh, I'm going to my studio to meditate on the floor. And I think it sounds so ludicrous that no one even believes me. They're like, oh yeah, like I really think no one believes me. But I realize sometimes in situations, big institution, I don't know if anybody teaches or works in an institution, sometimes you can say these very idiosyncratic things and people don't even really take you seriously. But I just wanted to sort of lift my computer to show you how small it is, and it's covered with prints. So like I could barely walk on the floor when I got here, but I did meditate before I got here. So I did my thing. And that is kind of where I'm at, right? I think many times as artists, as parents, as mothers, or however you identify yourself as a caretaker, like we're trying to get there and all the other people in our lives from here. So how do we do that? And a lot of times getting there, you have to get there from here. And so I do meditate a lot. And my work is really kind of an exercise in meditation, shape, and color. And so because I'm walking, to my job and I'm walking here to meditate, the work is influenced, and then that meditative space, the work is influenced by architecture, sort of the busy city. I want to maybe move into more organic shapes, but this is my landscape. I'm looking at windows and, I showed you that picture of FIT, and there's a building process to my prints. And that's what I primarily make right now, although that's not what I've always made. And I work at a community print shop, which was very difficult in pandemic time, which we're still sort of emerging out of. In fact, after this talk, I go get like my third booster or something. So I have a 17-year-old who's about to be 18 in October. And we picked up another teenager at the start of the pandemic that's been living with us since. And that has been an interesting way to kind of grow the family. I think my teenager would have been incredibly lonely. New York was incredibly lonely. I work in a community print shop, so I thought I wasn't going to ever print again. And it's been a challenging time. Now, during the pandemic, in the summer of 2021, I did have an exhibition of my work called Metropolis. It sort of focused on some of these ideas of printmaking in the city. And here's an image of it. It's a gallery called Municipal Lawns, and this is in San Francisco. And right now they have this piece, and I think this piece in their annex in the hallway. And I've never been to the gallery. I've only worked with them, remotely, but I would love to go. I don't fly. I'm a sort of no-fly pioneer. I really believe in, conserving resources for the universe. And I have a whole series of pink prints. And I'm just showing you one. Again, they're very focused on sort of a meditative space, a city space that I carry everything to the print shop. So I work at Manhattan Graphics, but I've also worked at Lower East Side Print Shop or Robert Blackburn Print Shop. And I print one color at a time, usually several shapes at a time. So one print might go to the print shop 5 times and therefore take 6-9 months to make. And then, as I showed you a few minutes ago, everything dries on the floor. And I really prints fit my lifestyle right now because I go to the print shop once a week. Even though I come to the studio every day, I'm not making work every day. I'm thinking about the work. I'm thinking about the color. I think even when my kid was young, a baby, and I wasn't working at all, sort of making work, I was still always in the process of thinking, collaborating, kind of talking to my visionary guardians. And what's a visionary guardian? I really believe in having a set of artists or thinkers that might not be in our physical form anymore, might be dead, that I try to put my work in conversation with. So you might see a little bit of Donald Judd or a little Eva Hess or a little Agnes Martin or a little Louise Bourgeois or Alma Thomas. These are people that I'm thinking about on a regular day. So I never feel lonely in my work process. And a lot of times I print sort of weird shapes result at the print shop on the print bed. I have a image of the print bed that I'll get to, but they're collaged and vintage paper. I'm really into vintage paper and found paper and oops, it's not going forward. Okay, there. This is a more recent print. I've started to work larger, so this is 26 by 40, and that might be the biggest size. I'm carrying everything to the print shop, so I have a big portfolio and all my, my ink. Actually, I only do one color at a time, so my ink, and then all my shapes, and it's all with tape and Velcro, and it looks a little crazy. This is a print that I did during the pandemic. It was called COVID Blue, and I was doing one small piece of paper at a time, and then it became a bigger print, and you can kind of see why it's called that. This is an older print, and so I've been printmaking since about 2016. It's really something that came out of a drawing practice, and it really suits my practice well, since you can make a lot of work at once. And I use, the resources of Gutenberg Arts, which is in New Jersey, or here in New York City. And so I'm working with other people. Here's another pink. Again, this is a piece with all found paper. So some collage elements, again, very influenced by the city's simple geometric shapes. Here's a picture of the print or the press bed. So I use some shapes, like that metal shape is left over from a sculpture that I made. That's a public piece that was a percent for art piece, which is on the sidewalk in Brooklyn. And while that process was unfolding, a very sort of bureaucratic process with a lot of community group approval and a lot of steps to go through that made sure something is okay to sit on the sidewalk, I became friendly with the fabricators and their sheet metal shops. So from working with a sculpture, now I work with all of these metal plates with interesting shapes that might look a little bit like mountains or the Golden Gate Bridge, or other ideas that are man-made with the triangles and circles. I'm really into circles. I always feel like that's sort of a pause or a break or punctuation. But you can see there's a bunch of different paper and then a bunch of different shapes that are being printed over again or run through the press several times. So this is something that I call perches. So I made these before the prints, but I don't necessarily feel like, I'm sure we can talk about this, that there's a big break between one and the other. So for a long time, I made these sculptural social spaces, places for social engagement that you could come sit on, that kind of related to the architecture. This is in Brewster, New York, and it was like an art festival. And I made these perches, many of them. This was called Social Climber, and it was at a gallery in New York where you could actually walk on them. You could meet with other people. And again, the shapes are octagonal or circular or rectangular, geometric, but here's in big form. And I guess I wanted that juxtaposition, like, okay, I make prints that are sort of small, but I've made large work. And again, going back to that idea of like, think of your ideas as big and operative and taking you places. Speaking of taking you places, so probably one of my favorite works and biggest regrets is when I had a kid, I got rid of my El Camino, and I had turned into a sculpture space. And again, it was called a perch, but I called it Perchance. And I drove it a couple places around the country, and it was shown at Socrates Sculpture Park, and everything folded flat when I was driving, and then sort of popped up. It was kind of based on boat furniture, and it took me a long time to make and figure out sort of architecturally place these shapes. But if you're paying attention, you're going to kind of see that the shapes are similar from the prints to the architectural or socially engaged pieces. And here's another one, similar idea. So this is now a perch that allowed people to draw. This is at the Drawing Center in New York, and that shape that all of these structures are on, the seats and the desk and a chair, it's all the same shape of the leg. So it's this kind of triangular shape, and everything was built on that. So the platform is that same shape as the leg, and then the stool has the four legs, and then the table has the legs and the chair, and it's all similar. You could come to the Drawing Center and draw. Here's another piece that is in a gallery, but I built this desk, sort of the perfect place to sketch, but gallery visitors could come and sit at the desk and draw. And again, it's not dissimilar from the prints or my drawings or even my thought making in terms of building something, letting it go out there in the universe or come back and tell you something. This is a piece, again, another perch. This is in Washington, D.C. This one led to a couple different ones. This was in New York at MetroTech for the Public Art Fund. And that led to the permanent piece. So here's the permanent structure. And I've sort of stopped making these. It takes a lot of usually a fabricator and lots of materials, and I feel comfortable making prints, or this idea of making a mark is printmaking. Having somebody sit is an impression. And so I haven't made one in a while, a perch. I've been kind of curating and making a gallery, but this was the last one I made, and it is on Humboldt Street, or I think Humboldt between Moore. It's in East Williamsburg. And this was a fortuitous moment. I went to check on my art piece, which is a very humble experience to check on your own art. And I turned the corner from the subway and there was this big salsa dance party. So I felt like, wow, okay, so my piece is now the communities. And that's what I really want. I want other people to, participate for ownership. And here, I think this was a requirement. You had to be in the picture of your own work, send it to the city of New York, and then they send you your final check. So there's my picture. And here's just another, just so you can see, here I am really thinking about art in space, or how to make a grouping, or how to make a place where people can have community, where they could have a conversation, where they could be together. And so, okay, so from all of these perches, and again, this is not totally in order, but close. I decided, well, I could just build these perches all over the country, or I could maybe go back to that idea of thinking about bigger ideas. So what came after perch was this idea of pocket utopia. And I had this opportunity to open up a storefront gallery space that was really like a salon. I never had a desk. We always all sat on the floor. And that's Rico Gatson, who's sitting in the chair with piece of paper in his hand, and he's giving a talk about his work. And I ran the space for 2 years, feeling that it would have a beginning, middle, and end, and it had a place in the gallery, in the art scene of Bushwick. It was one of the first galleries there. And it was only open on Saturdays and Sundays. So my kid was pretty little at this time. So, this is probably 14 years ago. And, I was able to kind of take care of this young kid. And then on Saturday and Sunday, I went to the gallery, and this was my community. And from sort of sitting around and talking about art, and I told Kaylin about this, and it's a little bit more on the podcast about working in Moleskine notebooks, is that I realized I was having all these salons at this artist run space, Pocket Utopia, and I could draw in the sketchbook while things were going on. And I used a lot of stencils. Honestly, I think the first stencil I used was when you go to a birthday party with your kid and they get, a little ruler with stencils and in the goodie bag, and your kid doesn't really want that, or maybe they do want that. And those are like the first marks that entered my sketchbook. And from the sketchbook has come so much, like my prints developed out of these sketches. I'm just going to show you a bunch of different sketchbooks. So now really the sketchbook process, I feel like there are daily exercises, or this one's more recent. And I do write little things in there. You can see every single minute in time, or positive aspects, just trying to be my own self-help guru. And this is a recent one. And all these sketches came first, and then sort of the prints came after that. But that whole time period of like taking my kid to school from 2nd grade to about 7th grade, I would take him early in the morning and drop him off. And there were a whole community of grown-ups, of parents that would drop their kid off, and then we would go have coffee and talk about, homework, or how horrible the teachers were, or how good the teachers were. And I would draw, being sort of a shy person. I know that might be a shock, but I'm a little shy. But I found that people would get coffee and I would draw in my sketchbook, and I could listen, even though it wasn't other artists. I felt like the same energy was still happening. I was listening and I was drawing, and I was making people more comfortable to talk about how they felt being a parent, and that certain, angst that they might have been going through right after drop off. I was making people feel more comfortable by drawing at the cafe. And one time we were so loud, there were 3 cafes. I think Annie's, or I don't know, Amy's Bread were too loud for there. So then we went to this place called Rocco's, and they kicked us out of there because the moms were too loud. And then we ended up at Starbucks. But the day that we got kicked out of, and I never spoke, I was always really quiet. The day we got kicked out of Rocco's, I made so many good drawings there for like 3 years. I cried on the sidewalk. I was like, I can't believe. And the waitress came up to me. She was like, no, you could stay. It's the other moms, because they brought Starbucks into Rocco's, and then whatever. And so we ended up being at Starbucks, which was okay. It was okay. And here is, the drawings. I think just to emphasize that this was done at a cafe, this was like the bottom of my coffee cup, and just sketched. And really that sort of miasma of so much going on in New York City, or being a parent, or having school-age kids. And, no one tells you when you have kids that you're gonna, well, no one told me that you have to go through school again. That was sort of a shock to me. Like it never stops. Okay, so I just wanted to show you so many of those moms were so supportive of me drawing, and they were a really interesting group of people. And one of the dads was a contractor, and he helped me find a space on the Lower East Side and renovate it and reopen Pocket Utopia on the Lower East Side. And it became an even bigger community. Now it was my artist friends and my parent friends, and my kid spent most of his days after school here, and the space still exists. It's on 191. It's not called Pocket Utopia. It's run by another gallery, but because of all the crazy New York real estate stuff, my name is still on the lease, and I still really have helped other galleries that are in that space. And Housing Gallery, that is run by KJ Freeman, is now here, and really, help her on a regular basis with her rent, and with the lights, and with the air conditioning. And I'm not making a dime off of that. It's just that, I'm still have my name on the lease. So here's the picture of what it looked like on the Lower East Side, as opposed to that other picture. So I did get a desk. I sort of upped my cred a little bit, and the gallery became a little bit more commercial, just because the rent was more, and it was on the Lower East Side. there's my son on the left, little, now he's huge. But you can just see very small space, but a lot could happen in the small space. And, it was open Wednesday to Sunday. Oh, that's the old space, just a good juxtaposition. I said it wasn't totally in order. And then I became very good friends with people who run another gallery called Hansel and Gretel Picture Garden, and they were in Chelsea, and we merged. So from the Lower East Side for a very short period of time, we were on 22nd Street, I think. And we were there for about 2 years. And from this space, I feel like we came together to come apart. From this, I decided to really focus on my art. And that's when I went into printmaking and Hansel and Gretel Picture Garden. Sarah and Jason, they went on to, one of them got a PhD in art history from Stanford, and one became an acupuncturist and did have has 2 kids. And this is a picture of housing. This is a recent, still at the same space, 191 Henry Street. Sort of, I've passed the baton, but still really help KJ Freeman keep her baton in the air. It's hard to run a gallery in New York, even harder in the past few years, but I just wanted to show this picture as some continuity. And then I wanted to show some pictures of people. Of course, I have these visionary guardians that, I sort of meditate to, but this is Sharon Loudon, and she's been super helpful to me. I think that's how I've gotten to where I am, or these people that help you along the way, either mentors or collaborators. And this is a picture of Sally Morgan Lehman on the right wearing all black, and then Tracy saying I fucking love myself shirt in the middle, and then me. And this is recently at the Future Fair. And Tracy was an FIT student. She's the one with the pink hair, and she is like my soulmate. We became very good friends during the pandemic. Just talking on the phone. FIT was closed. We would go look at art, and we really talked about what it meant to be an artist. And during the pandemic, not only picking up another kid, which has been a beautiful experience, but really feeling like the way we get through life is about radical reciprocity, being very generous, and even job sharing. And so during the summer of 2021, after Tracy graduated, I got a job teaching at the new school, and I just split my salary and hired Tracy, and the 2 of us co-taught it on Zoom. And I felt like that was an amazing experience for both of us. And she's about to have something that opens tonight at the Affordable Art Fair in New York City. And Tracy and I really forged this relationship where we, text and talk every day. And she now shows or works with my gallery, Sally from Morgan Lehman Gallery. And Sally and I have become very close, and Sharon Loudon introduced me to Sally. So I just wanted to put in these pictures of people that are really important to me. This is Jeffrey Maris, and he is somebody who I met when I learned how to print. And I went to Gutenberg Art, so I got a residency there. And he was there at the time. He was still in undergraduate school, but he's just about to be a fellow or an artist in resident at the Studio Museum. He's also become a really big pal. So these pals that have really shaped my life. This is Dr. Valerie Steele now at FIT. She runs the museum, and I run the more student gallery, and she runs the fashion museum. And from the outside, people would think that we're sort of competitors when I first got there, but we have become very, very close friends, and our friendship is invaluable. And I just want to stress that need for friends, not that many. These are like I just showed you all the pictures of my friends, essentially. That's all I've got. Valerie and I look at art together. She loves to look at art, and I love to look at art, but I've learned to really love going to galleries. After working at one, you don't want to go to galleries sometimes, but I love going to galleries. And Valerie having a PhD in art history and well, actually fashion history. She's really sort of pushed me to be a little smarter. And I think that has really helped me. She goes to the library at FIT all the time and she's always bringing me books and she's really, really nerdy. And we really forged a strong relationship. Oh, and then here are these two books that Sharon edited, Living and Sustaining a Creative Life and The Artist as Cultural Producers. And I just wanted to show covers of that. And then one of my favorite books that I keep coming back to is called Big Magic. And it's a book that I read or I listen to a lot. And it has really reminded me to stay curious. And I think that's the last image. That's it.
Amazing, Austin. Thank you so much. So let's open up the floor for questions. You can either use your raise hand feature or drop a question in the chat and I will field it. I had a question just that came up for me as I was thinking about your work and kind of how your earlier work, you had, kind of a decade or however long of doing the perches and the much more like interactive community-based sculpture work. And then I don't know if it's the last like 10 years or so, the work has shifted to be more sketchbook printmaking, kind of 2D. And, you talked a lot about the connections between that work, like just the physical connections, the conceptual connections. I'm just curious about your experience as an artist, like making this work that you see people literally sitting on it, playing with it, having conversations in it, to then your whole practice sort of shifted to the sort of insular artist who just kind of makes their own work and puts it out in the world and is not really sure like how people are interacting with it or kind of what happens. Could you talk just about almost like your own internal journey with that? And like, I don't know if that's something you've thought about or, but I'm just curious to know how you've navigated sort of that big shift just as your own identity as an artist,
Complicated question.
I'm good at
Well,
those.
I feel that, the print work and sketchbook work, the sketchbooks, remember, they were made around a group of people. Now, I don't make them so much around a group of people, but I feel like I still make them while listening to, an old interview with Agnes Martin, just say, that I'm still listening and drawing. I'm still running a gallery, very, very public space at FIT, 9 to 5. Public going, where is she? And so there's still these elements. I think our lives as artists, we think that life is short, but it is short, but it is very wide. And within that width are many different types of very broad definitions of I feel like I still make the work at a public print shop. And I've recently, like Jeffrey was my friend at the first print shop. Tracy's been my very good friend at FIT and beyond in terms of teaching. Maybe all that social engagement has maybe has a little bit more meaning. It means more to me. It's more important to me. The pandemics definitely shaped some of that, and being a parent and having, a 17-year-old has shaped that, having a job has shaped that. But recently, like I have a new friend at the print shop, an older man who's been printing. He's retired now, but he was a computer software engineer for years. And, now we're sort of an odd couple talking about our types of prints. And I feel so much of the work, either prints, drawings, perches, gallery, it's so much of going to see galleries with Valerie, reading and writing in a book about Sharon is about conversation, even that Elizabeth Gilbert talks about. Stay curious. It's about staying curious. The questions that you ask yourself, the questions that you have for the people around you, that sort of joyful exploration that is so important. even if you're talking to dead people. And I don't want to sound like a weirdo, like I talk to dead people, I see dead people, but I think it's important to have these people that are bigger than yourself that you can like meditate on and love, and collect their books and look at their work and share with other people.
Awesome. Thank you, Austin. Susan Casey asked about that transition from purchase to printmaking, like how and why, and you
Okay,
talked
first
about
of
that a
all,
little bit on the
yeah.
podcast, but if you want to dive
I
into.
don't know if I said this on the podcast, but like making purchase when you have a little kid, okay, it's complicated. They're so expensive. You need so much tools and trucks and people to help you and buying wood, which I don't like doing. And that was a lot. It was plus a lot of those were made for temporary situations, and it just wasn't sustainable. It wasn't, I think, having a practice that fits your lifestyle, particularly after you have a family. I could have continued that, but it would have cost a lot of money. I think to maintain something that is not, it wasn't sustainable.
Mhm.
And I think the prints, someone suggested to me, oh, have you ever made prints? I think it was Sharon from the drawings. And I was like, no, I never even thought about making prints. I think sometimes every once in a while, every 10 years or a few years, someone says something to you and you go, oh, that's good. Sometimes I think about making sculpture again, and I have some ideas about maybe creating landscape or planting trees. Like, I've been thinking a lot about my exit strategy from this full-time job to something maybe even more sustainable or giving back, something making the world. I don't see myself continuing to make prints forever. Maybe to make an impression, like that might move in a wider, more fluid idea.
I love that you're just open to those big transitions and even ones that are as extreme as, kind of moving from large wooden sculptures to prints to who knows where it'll take you.
Well, I felt like the wooden purchase merged into the gallery from purchase to Pocket Utopia. Even, yeah.
Some really nice comments in the chat. And again, I'll save the chat for you so you can read them later. But Sophia, thank you so much for sharing. I'm inspired by your attitude around connecting with people and honoring people who feed you emotionally and creatively. Terry, I love the way everything you do revolves around people, involves people, and literally provides something for people to make their own, breathe life into, and enjoy.
It's so amazingly said. Wow. That I want to say. Thank you. That's beautiful.
Melissa, while running the gallery, do you put any focus on sales or are you primarily looking to it as a social experience? If putting any focus on sales, how do you reach out to potential collectors?
Okay, so at the first Pocket Utopia, which was in kind of like 2007 to 2010, the rent was very cheap, but I had to pay it, right? I had to pay my rent. So I did a lot of artist residence, like teaching gigs where you're a visiting artist, and that would pay the rent. But I developed a program where ironically, even though I never made prints then and hadn't thought about it, I made prints using a GoCo printer on my kitchen table. I made prints. It's like a kind of easy bake oven, like a silk screener. You like burn a light bulb and it makes an image. So I made these prints with artists who were more established than me that didn't necessarily show at Pocket Utopia. And I sold those. I gave them a series of prints and I sold them for like $200 and maybe 20 of them. And I did one a month and carried them with me and sold them every chance I got to people who wanted maybe Deborah Brown, who is a painter, Rico Gatson, and Bruce Honeycutt, other artists who I knew that also had a community who could help me sell these prints for this artist run space that were relatively affordable and, get the word out, and that they were small. They were just like postcard size. So that's what I did at Pocket Utopia when it was Bushwick. On the Lower East Side, honestly, I hustled. I was open Wednesday through Sunday, like a real gallery, and hustled. Like my husband still says, because we help KJ Freeman pay her rent, every once in a while when she falls short. And my husband will say, every month, Austin, you paid that rent. Every month, he says, and I go, and every month I hustled my ass off. Like I just met with people, and one of the parents actually that was at my kid's school was a car dealer, and he once gave me a lecture on how to sell. And I listened to every single word, and I was like, I'm going to try all those things. And when people came into the gallery, I just tried to sell them artwork. Just tried to sell them artwork. And God damn it, I did. No, I really sorry for swearing, but I hustled. And then when the gallery had that short-term period in Chelsea, you moving from Bushwick to Lower East Side to Chelsea, these are incredibly different sort of price points and real estate markets. And so on 24th Street or 22nd Street was totally different. And Sarah and Jason, and I talk about this in Artist as Cultural Producer, I talk about who they were, and they went to Harvard. They had kind of a higher, they had a little bit more access to people with money than I did. And they had a certain clientele. It didn't last long because it was a different type of hustle. And they were very young, and they were just about to have children, and they were still looking at their next step of career. But that was a different hustle altogether. But definitely on the Lower East Side, running that little gallery. And I think, I got some artist reviews in the New York Times, and, that helped. And, just really, really, really doubling down and connecting and hustle.
Sounds like a lot
For
of
other people,
Yeah, sounds like a lot of your work was really based off foot traffic, like people who came in and, so folks not in New York, it's totally a different strategy for connecting with buyers and collectors if you're not having those physical connections happen because people are walking in to the gallery,
Right. And it's a handful of people. It was just like six people per month could pay your rent.
Mm-hmm.
The same six. And, New York City is a little bit different than maybe some other places around the US. I don't know about like the world, but, and every market's a little bit different. I sold things for like $2,000, $5,000 at Pocket Utopia on the Lower East Side. KJ Freeman sells things for $42,000. She just had a sellout booth at the Armory, and she had an artist with 4 paintings. And the only reason why I know that is because I was on a little tour, and somebody asked, like, did this booth sell out? I was on a hyperallergic tour, and someone said, did this booth sell out? And the gallery person said yes. And then they said, how much were they? And so I learned, how much. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. Couple
Good
more.
for that artist. Good for Nathaniel Green. Good for that.
I was hoping it was
Nathaniel Oliver.
Okay, a couple more just nice, generous comments. I love your focus on community and art making and the effect friends, mentors, and community has on your artwork, especially communicating with visionary guardians, which was the term that you coined. Terry, how have you seen the galleries in New York change since the onset of COVID?
Well, I mean, let's see, I just went to Bushwick Open Studios over the weekend, and I noticed there was an article in Hyperallergic on Monday that said Bushwick Open Studios, what a hot mess. It's less organized, like maybe the community is less organized on that level. When the pandemic first hit all the galleries in Chelsea, this is like in 2020, September 2020, every gallery was showing just their blue chip artists. And that was enjoyable to look at, but it wasn't necessarily a conversation starter. I know galleries right now are having a hard time. I think they were doing pretty well during, sort of in 2021, like fall of 2021, a year ago, people were at home and they were buying artwork. People were selling artwork online. I don't know if anybody knows Lab Space, run by Julie Torres and Ellen Fletcher. Okay, so those are Pocket Utopia kind of alumni from Bushwick days, and they are now upstate, and they did very well during the pandemic since they were reaching people online. Right now, it might be a little bit tough for the gallery on the Lower East Side if they're not participating in art fairs. Last year, I went to 6 art fairs in like 3 months. I don't even really like art fairs. Like, I had to tell my husband, he goes, let's go to this art fair. I was like, I just like news. I don't really like art fairs. I sort of was going to them because they were open. It was like the only thing open, or Valerie would get free tickets to, Park Avenue Armory. And I would say like, okay, let's go. And we made the best of it. It was like, over the past 2 years, I've become sort of an art tourist in my own city where I never really was before. And that must mean, although I'm not necessarily looking at it in that way, that must mean that a lot of emerging artists are not in that conversation because people are trying to pay their bills. I mean, not sure, but a lot of galleries have opened upstate. There's more galleries that are in Beacon and, in Hudson and Chatham, New York, and other places. And those need community. Like, artists need to support artists in those situations, and any other situation besides this hot New York that is an international market. Artists need to support artists. And I've always said that artists need to buy other art. Like, well, I say it in the book, in one of Sharon's book, real artists buy other artists' artwork. And you have to do that. You have to do that.
Another question. You said your son is almost 18. Have you thought about how your practice will change after he moves into adulthood?
It's fun. Okay, so for a little while before I took this full-time job at FIT, I was making prints, sort of that 2017, 2018. I was doing some freelance curating at galleries and artist residencies, and kind of moving a little slower could have looked. And my son used to come home from middle school every day, and I would try to be there every day. He would come home. I would try to be there. Like, I would be at a meeting in their studio, I'd just run like, I gotta get home at 2:30, like a crazy person. And my son would say, hi mom, how was your so-called job? Like, he has no memory of ever saying that, but like, F you. So like, I broke my neck to get home at 2:30 so I could pour you some orange juice and just be the perfect mom. And so then I took the full-time job, which has been interesting. And, you can see how the art and life sort of has merged. There's a holistic thing going on. I'm not sure. I do have, I have this exit strategy from FIT that I'm, contemplating and thinking about teaching more, maybe traveling more, and working differently, like spending time. Like, I've never been to that San Francisco gallery, municipal bonds, and maybe I'll drive out there. My mom, I've told Kaylin this, my mom is 90 and she is an artist, and spending time with her, like, maybe there'll be more time out of this center city that I've got going on, and a little bit the road trip.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Austin. Anybody have a final question? Great comment from Elizabeth. Inspiring your life in art, your honesty, and the bottom line, curiosity in your connection with art heroes and friends. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, that is, it's nice to hear your words sort of reflected back to you in terms of community.
Okay, I have a question as we wrap up, back to being a curator and gallerist. Where do you find artists that you want to work with? Kind of what is like your research strategy? And then, just what are some of the like things that kind of spark your interest and you're like, ooh, I see something there. I want to work with that person.
Well, I'm a big believer, proponent in Pinterest, right? Like I'm always like pinning artists and sort of taking, that's where I like take notes on like criticality, things that I might see related. And I am thinking about reopening Pocket Utopia, maybe not as a brick and mortar space, maybe something that's more itinerant, that maybe the kid is older, I quit my job, or I, have more part-time gigs and I'm out there maybe making little pocket utopias. So of course I have some ideas of artists that I would like to show, some that I've worked with before, some that I've never worked with, like Sharon Loudon. I've never really done something with her work, her maybe aluminum sculptures in a space. I've been thinking about that. Usually it's people that I know. Sometimes I do see art from a student at FIT besides Tracy that I'm like, oh, that art is beautiful. And it's definitely, if I open up Pocket Utopia, that'll, I'll have that space to research and look and put things together. I want to put things together in places that have an interesting conversation, maybe outside of New York and maybe in different places and maybe in some sort of healing environment or some environment that, sustains or it promotes some sort of growth, like in, ideally, I don't know, planting trees and having sculpture.
Awesome.
Like I want to make pocket utopias.
Yeah. With perches and trees and
dead people, not just and my friends, just sorry. I had
places to talk to dead people. How about that? What was
or
Tracy?
just a place to meditate.
Yes.
Oh, Tracy Johnson.
Tracy Johnson.
Tracy Johnson. It's Tracy with an I.
Okay,
She's going to be in the Affordable Art Fair tonight.
Oh, great. Two more quick questions. Elizabeth asked if your prints are mono prints.
Yes. Monotypes, I think.
Monotypes.
Yeah. So every single one is different. So just like you can see some behind me and like see these. We'll go to the print shop again and all different sizes, different colors.
Okay. And last question from Casey. How do, if you do, balance assist artists you represent who want to pursue installation work? Or is it always 100% commercially viable artists? Great question.
Yeah, great question. So, what's fun at FIT is that we do invite outside artists, guest artists to do installations. So university galleries are a good place for that. And Kaylin, you're about to do one too. I think, with thinking about just practically like working with Sharon, if I reopen Pocket Utopia, if I step into that sole sort of proprietor of having some sort of space or, curator associated with it, an idea or organization, she'll do an installation. I think, I am sort of entrepreneurial, like I have that in me. Maybe from living in New York, trying to survive. Like I have that, I use the word hustle. Like obviously I moved here with like $5 in my pocket. So I obviously have that part of me that exists. And so I think I might, work with that artist to maybe help them get a teaching gig, maybe help them do a permanent public sculpture. That may be a free form installation that isn't associated with the marketplace. Maybe it has something associated something that could sustain that, some aspect of, be it a small print, a t-shirt or whatever. Like, I feel like you can fundraise.
Awesome. All right, everybody.
I thank you so much. Everybody's questions were I just thank you. I'm just kind of overwhelmed and really want to learn about all of you and see your work. I think like that's the biggest thing about showing, making, looking, hustling, whatever, talking, meditating is the art. It always comes back to your art. Like you either, you love looking at it. Art to me is life. And so thank you so much for just, affirming that for me today. Thank you.
Yes, and I just wanted to share too that Austin said that she was nervous to talk to you all. So
It was.
it's just your down to earth nature with your, incredible bio. I don't know, it's just been so refreshing connecting with you, and everybody's just really grateful. So thank you so much, Austin. I'll save the chat and I'll be posting the link for the recording and share with everyone.
And I'll follow everybody. I don't have very many I've had like so many different Instagrams, they get like hacked and I have to start over again or something. So, but I'm happy to rebuild.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.